Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Well, hello, Abby.
Happy anniversary! I beat
Happy
you.
belated
I
anniversary.
am a better human
it's
than
actually
you.
passed. Last
I
year
am a
was
better
our
human.
10-year anniversary.
Yep. And it was epic.
Yeah. Why was that epic, Abby?
Oh, because you are the boss man. You are
Yeah.
Mr. Romance Sauce. That's not right. Nope.
Sounds horrible.
You are Mr. Romantic, king of the romance, king of the swoons,
I don't know if I'm that.
king of the heart melt cities.
I think I did it right.
You killed it.
So last year was our 10-year anniversary, and I think I did do a pretty good job planning an epic journey. We're not going to go into the
7
details
days
of it.
of glorious surprises,
Yeah.
including a re-proposal, a re-honeymoon.
Uh-huh.
It was so great.
Yeah, re-honeymoon sex, everything that goes with that. Anyways, so
And
this
this year,
it was our 11-year anniversary.
11 years.
Which you were in charge of. Tell everybody what you did.
No.
Go ahead,
that
tell
is
everybody.
No, we did not say Abby's in charge of this anniversary.
Yeah, but it was unspoken, right? It's like last year Justin does a 10-year anniversary.
No.
Obviously just 11 year.
We talked about it.
Uh-huh.
And we both said, let's not do anything.
Did we? Or did you be like, oh, I don't really have anything planned out. And
I see what
we're
you're
on the
doing
same
here.
page, right,
I'm
Justin?
bring it up on the podcast, and I'm going to make you look like I'm the better spouse.
It's so real. So real. So what did you do for our 11-year anniversary
We
for
did
me?
nothing. We did absolutely.
How do you put
No,
we?
wait, you know what I did?
Just say I did nothing.
I made a video about last year's anniversary.
As a tribute to how awesome I was?
Yes.
Oh, that was
I
so
made a
sweet
mushy
of you.
video about how great
Oh
you
my
made our
gosh.
10th anniversary.
That was such a good 11-year anniversary. Thanks for that.
And I posted it, so people can go watch it if they want to see how great our thing was. It's a quick little slideshow
Oh, that's
where I'm
cute.
like sappy and
That's cute.
emotional and.
Do you think that there's ever a place where a woman needs to learn how to romance a man's
Yes,
heart?
I do that. Don't like if we want to talk about this. I have so many epic things I have done for you.
That's true. That's
Don't
true.
try to flip this.
Yeah. There was one.
You said
30 year
let's do
30
it.
year
No,
birthday.
shut up. There's so many.
No, I'm kidding. I'm
There's
throwing
so
her under the bus for fun.
many.
But 11 years, after 10 years, everybody...
goes downhill.
It all goes downhill. You just like, what you decide at the 11-year mark is like, oh, we've done kind of, yeah.
No. Okay, that's not true. Don't kill people's hopes and dreams. Here's what we kind of do. We often, same with birthdays, we'll do like a big birthday and then a couple years where it's a little bit smaller. And
Yeah,
then,
it's just relaxing.
So we did a big anniversary and in a couple years we'll do another big
I'll
anniversary.
put it this way. I was all about doing nothing after all the work I put in last year.
Totally.
So
Like,
I didn't
this is the best.
even if you were like, I want to do something awesome for you. I'm like, I don't even care. It's not a
I
big
know.
deal.
You
as long as I don't have responsibility.
That is what you were like. So when you said that I didn't plan it was a
really,
little
ladies, all
surprise
your
here.
men out there that you're like, oh, they never do anything for me. They're saving it up for 10 year, 20 year, and the 30 year.
I don't know that I'd bank on that. That could set you up for a lot of hope deferred and bitterness. And he's like, wait, why do you want to divorce me after our 10-year anniversary? That's so weird. I've been waiting for 10 years.
10 years was the magic zone. Anyways,
Anyway, it was
so
a great
nothing
anniversary.
special for 11 years.
But I actually
it was
felt
good.
really loved and mushy.
Yeah, I had a good time. We just
We were
relaxed and did cute
connected.
little things that we enjoy doing together.
Yeah.
The whole point is that you actually don't have to have these epic events.
No.
They have to happen. They're just
can
little
celebrate everything.
small heartfelt moments where you just hang out and enjoy each other.
Yeah. You know, something that was awesome about our 10-year anniversary.
What? And then let's move this forward.
I am moving it forward. Take a chill pill. Take a chill pill over there. Why don't you trust your partner over here, okay?
I don't know. You're the talker.
Okay. So on our 10-year anniversary, you took us to Catalina Island.
I did. Oh, yeah.
You, because we have a friend.
Oh, what a good segue. You're so smart.
Oh, who's sucking it now? That's not a great thing to say.
I don't know.
That's not the right thing. I just wanted to be like, booyah, you shouldn't have mistrusted me. I was right. I was going somewhere.
I don't know what's wrong with you. Go. Continue this conversation.
So you took me to Catalina Island.
I did.
Where we have a friend who grew up on Catalina Island. And she helped you get like the best hotel room in Catalina.
I can't believe I actually know someone who grew up on Catalina. It's so crazy and weird.
Yeah, it's awesome. But also it gave us
I literally got the best hotel room in Catalina Island, in my opinion.
And there was a champagne bottle there waiting for us and a note from her.
Giant 2-person tub, which crazy stuff happened in that.
No, and you could watch TV. That's what you mean.
I hope they Cloroxed it.
Oh, gosh. Anyway, today we have a special guest, and it is the glorious woman who made that trip epic for us, but also who we just love dearly.
Yeah, let me tell you a little quick thing about her that go a little in depth now that our banter is over about this whole situation. But the person who's joining us today formally had partaken in the Liberation Project. She jumped in when I was gone 1 week, and I heard phenomenal feedback from everyone.
It's everybody's favorite episode.
They're like, Laura Duncan's amazing. And I'm like, wait, what?
What about me?
Did it give you a complex?
Did you miss me?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Everyone forgot about me. Her name's Laura Duncan, right?
Yes.
And Miss Laura Duncan.
She's like, I used to call her shame shaman, but that's not like a good word.
Shame shaman.
But they just sounded like
shame
similar.
Ninja.
I call her a shame guru.
Yeah.
She's like an epic ninja at getting people free in their hearts.
I was going to call her a compassion something, but I have.
Yeah, I mean, it's better to call her by the positive thing. Like she's a compassion.
I love how she's sitting over there trying not to laugh into her microphone. She's like, you can laugh into it. It's still okay, Laura.
I didn't know.
You have permission. Welcome.
I'm all out of breath talking because I've been laughing so hard but trying to keep it in.
Silent laugh is work.
Now, Laura's amazing with compassion and love and helping people connect to their...
She radically changes people's lives.
Yeah.
Radically helps them. And she's one of those people that like is an emotional ninja, but she's science-based, which that's a very rare thing. Like I'm going to help you figure out your insides, but actually I have the facts. I'm not just like sending you on an emotional.
Do you have facts, Laura?
I have a couple, maybe 2.
But I use them.
Yeah. And she BS's her way really good.
I throw out a couple big words and then, a lot of facts.
As soon as you throw out a couple big words, people trust you.
Yeah.
Now, I've personally gone to Laura and sat down inside of her office for my own heart, right?
Yep.
Cried like a little baby, didn't I?
Did you?
Pretty much.
She laughed at me. She's like, why are you being such a baby?
It's kind of like reverse psychology.
That's how she helps. Yeah.
You shame them and then you heal them.
Yep.
But she's incredibly safe, loving, a place that feels like you can just bare your soul immediately inside of your space. And she brings this sense of joy everywhere she goes. Like when we're in the hallway, like when Laura's not here for the week, I'm like,
yeah, she's in her
where'd
hallway.
Laura go?
We have a hallway.
Because when she's here, she comes out, she's like, hi, big smile. And then she does something like
I gotta
weird.
say, once I learned she grew up on Catalina, I like understood her instantly.
Totally.
I guess I can say it to you because you're
a
here.
special breed.
Well, because it's like there's this
like a Hawaiian.
island, happy, go lucky, things are gonna work out.
Yeah.
Like let's enjoy life. Like you've got that vibe.
Anyways, so we want to jump
Welcome.
in. We've brought
Thank
Laura
you.
in here today because we want to tackle something called grief.
Yeah.
And Laura has a beautiful story in her background that we're going to go investigate in of her own journey of processing grief. And what I find is amazing is that she's not at all embittered by her story, but she's someone that's found even more compassion and kindness and love for the world around her through some of the process that she's had to go through. And in the world today, I don't feel like there's really, and I know a lot of people listening to us have been like, we want information on grief, on how to grieve. And it doesn't feel like there's a lot of material out there for the grief process, except for the simple few steps. And then like,
well,
all
I mean,
right,
there's if you Google it, there's tons of material. But
there is, but stuff that feels readily easy to help you process your heart.
I think grief is one of the most important subjects in humanity right now because not feeling your pain is what leads to pretty much every dysfunction.
Yeah.
And every addiction and every relationship issue all centers around not feeling. And most of the times we refuse to feel because we don't know how to grieve healthily. So then the pain gets locked and trapped in us and it comes out through unhealthy ways to try to get out. But we get stuck. And so I know for us, like when we led the course that we just led, facing pain is so important and you can't do it unless you have a map to walk through grief.
Yeah.
But if you can get good at grief, because grief is going to happen for every single human.
Yeah. Any loss. Yeah.
Yeah, because everybody goes through loss. It's a human theme. So anyway, I couldn't say, I think this is one of the most important, least talked about subjects.
So we're going to dive into your story, Miss Laura.
Sounds good.
So let's start with, tell us about you and your husband.
So Jeff and I, my husband's name is Jeff, and we met in 1999. And we met through travel. We were in part of a mission organization. We met, and actually our first time we met, I was like, I do not like that guy. And he was like becoming a monk, I think. And he was like, he's like, even if I liked her, I couldn't like her. and so our first interaction was definitely not that,
It was not love at first sight.
Oh no, it was, and I was like in this strong pursuit of God where I was just like, nothing gets in the way, especially not a man. I was like, I had a good soapbox going on. And so it's so much so that when I had to come back and tell people that when I met Jeff and then came back to tell people that we were getting married, I actually like hid in the closet and cracked the door open and was like, I'm getting married.
No, you didn't.
No.
I'm not joking at all.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, it was terrible. And then my mom told me to tell a person that likes to tell information about people. She's like, this is what you need to do. You need to call this person up right now.
Call the gossiper. Call the gossiper.
Yeah, and you need to tell this person you're getting married, and then it'll go like wildfire, and then everyone will know, and then it'll be out there. So I did.
That's brilliant. Your mom's brilliant.
That's
It
a
was
good
really
strategy.
good. And then I only had to say it once from a whisper of a closet. It was totally great. So needless to say, it wasn't necessarily like I want to get married. I actually wanted to eventually down the road. I was only 19 at the time.
Wow.
And so I kind of was thinking maybe late 20s. I'll be ready to do that because I'm very independent and very strong and wanting to go out and I don't know what I wanted to do, but I want to do all the things. And I thought marriage to a certain degree would hold me back. And then you have kids and then it's just downhill from there.
It's just going to drain the life out of you.
In prison.
At the end of the world. So I wasn't looking for it, but he found me. It found me. And we got married in about 8 months after knowing each other, because that's also what you did during that time.
Jump in.
Oh yeah, you know, just do it.
Totally.
So we didn't have a lot of like back history. We didn't have any counseling. We didn't have any process at all. And so when we first got married, we went on this road trip across country, which I know you guys also went on
You
a
did
road
that
trip.
too?
We
I
also
didn't know that
did.
about you.
Yeah.
Was it as bad for you as it was for us? No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, it was. No. I told people like it was like being married for 5 years.
That's what it
we
is
packed it in
like.
there. Yeah, totally. That's how it was. And I remember like
Yes.
one time like pulled over to the side of the road because you're in one of those swirls where you're just like, what did I do?
That's so funny because she says one time and ours was like 20 times.
Oh, no. This is just one time that it
One of
happened.
those times.
This was one of the
Yes.
many.
You get us.
Yeah, and I like walked out to
Yes.
this dock, and it was like one of those dramatic, like Titanic moments. And I was just like, "What did I do?" I was like, "I wonder what annulment is." You know, that's like,
Oh my gosh.
so.
the best.
Anyways, we went through, packed it in, but the beauty of that was, and you guys probably experienced this a little bit, is after that we kind of gotten through like our main issues. It doesn't mean we didn't fight. It doesn't mean we didn't have things come up, but it was almost like we kind of like fought through.
You were forged in the fire.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah. So the first, we were married for, when we got married, don't want to give it away. When we were married, like the first year was actually really good because the first 3 months was really hard.
Right.
So we went through similar, we had kids right away. So we have 4 children.
Get it.
Oh my gosh.
Packed
You
them
were
in.
busy.
We thought, you know what, if we're going to
It
do
was
this.
a one after another kind of
We're
deal.
going to go big. Yeah, we went
Go
big.
big or go home.
So 14 months apart are the first 3.
Wow.
So currently I have a 17-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 12-year-old.
That is impressive.
Didn't think it through like for every stage of life. I didn't realize like you're going to have 4 teenagers. I thought, let's just pack them in. We're doing naps anyways. Let's just do some more kids. More the merrier. And then I was like, ooh, I see why people usually spread this out. So
their teens hit and you went,
Oh yeah, a lot of it, a lot of good stuff. I actually love teenagers, but 4 is a lot.
4 is a lot.
4 is a lot for anything. So anyways, we got married had kids pretty much our first year. At our first anniversary, we had our first kid. She was there. So
wow.
yeah,
So
we
we
got
so fast.
so we got pregnant 3 months after being married, and then
oh my gosh,
almost to the day is her birthday. So she was present at our anniversary.
That is wild.
Yeah. So we had her, and then another,
And then kept
and
going?
another, and another, and so that was our first 5 years of marriage.
Was
And
having
yeah,
kids.
lots of kids.
And
Yeah.
what was that like for you guys relationally in the first 5 years? An overarching kind of like.
Yeah. He didn't grow up with a mom. His mom passed away when he was young. And so he didn't have a mom. He didn't have a family because a mom is a core to a family. So it was actually pretty magical because I came from a big family. So I was like, yay,
You did. You
family,
came from a
kids.
really big family. Like how many kids? 13?
Kids. Well, I'm one of 13. Yeah.
One of 13.
I don't want to exaggerate. I'm one of 13.
Yes, definitely don't exaggerate that.
Totally. So I came from a big family and I loved my family. So I was like, let's have kids. And then he was like, I didn't get a family. So this is all magical. Like he was experiencing his first things through us having our kids.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So it was
super
it was
redemptive.
very healing and very redemptive and very like, like when someone's never experienced something before, they're like, oh my goodness, this is the most amazing thing. And I'm kind of like, I already did this like 8 times because I'm the oldest. I'm number 3 of 13.
Right. You're like, I've raised like 20 of these already.
I'm like, it's just a baby. Okay.
Totally.
And he's like, it's a baby. so that was actually really an amazing experience.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
even like, the sleepless nights, the hard stuff, the baby's crying, he had so much love for the babies. Like all of their pictures, I was kind of jealous because he's actually the one holding the birthday cake and I'm taking the picture. And usually it's like the mom's right
mom?
there doing it
Totally.
and he's like right there. Like on her first birthday, we both have like half of the cake. We're like kind of wrestling a little bit with like who gets to give it to her.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
It's interesting because some people who didn't have a family don't know how to have a family.
And they don't want that.
And
at
they
all.
don't want it.
They're just like, no, thank you.
So it's actually amazing that like that's not always common, that if
No.
you didn't receive the nurture that you know how to give it.
Exactly. And he would literally say, I'm terrified, but I'm not going to let that stop me.
Oh.
So he's very tenacious and
Love
very
that.
strong. Yeah. So married, kids, having a really beautiful life. We didn't fight that much. And part of it was because we had that road trip in the beginning where we got a lot out. But then I kind of think, because as you'll hear our story, I think there was a lot of grace on it. Because when I look back at those years, they don't feel like the normal, like first 5 years of marriage where you're like, oh my goodness, this is so hard. It felt magical. It felt, special. And so it was a really, really good marriage. But in 2007, I knew I was going to cry. In 2007, he was diagnosed with ALS. And there might be a couple quiet feeling moments. But he was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease. It's also called ALS, and it's a nervous system disease. And up until that point, we're part of this church culture up here where we believe in healing. We believe in all these things. And Jeff believed in healing even more than I believed in healing. So when we first found out, he was like, no problem. ALS, there's no cure. It's terminal, and there's no treatment. There's nothing. There's literally nothing you can do. So when I first found out, I'm a little bit more of a realist, even though I have faith, I believe. I was kind of like, oh no. Where he was kind of like, it's okay. It's going to be fine. And I'm like shaking my head like, I don't think so. But that's how he lived his whole life, and it didn't change when he was diagnosed with a terminal sickness.
ALS is also like one of the most excruciating to watch diseases.
Especially, he was 33 at the time.
Oh.
We were married for 7 years.
And is it common to
young.
get that young?
There's different types.
Okay.
And so certain types, you're usually older. It's less common to get it at that young of an age.
Yeah.
So let's see. He died when he was 33, but he was 32 at the time.
Wow.
And so
from diagnosis to death was
18 months. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. From the moment he was diagnosed in, we didn't even really get an official diagnosis because there's not a lot known about the disease. So it was more just like everything points to this and this is what it is. And so we went home and we had 18 months of caregiving with very small children. At that time, they were 1,
Oh my
3,
gosh.
4, and 5.
I literally can't imagine having kids that young and finding out that my husband is dying.
Exactly. And that we didn't know like the day of, but very soon after, within a couple months of studying and learning, we also found out that like it's going to be like full on caregiving.
Oh yeah. It's not
24/7.
It's not like, oh, you're going to have a year and a half that is really easy and then he'll be gone.
No. And like Abby was saying, it's a horrible disease because your brain is fully functioning. Ugh. It's not dull in any way. You're fully alive, fully present. But your body, your nerve endings are dying, so all of your limbs are becoming immobile. Oh. So you're literally trapped in your own body.
What was it like watching that?
Horrendous. It was really hard. You go through such weird, like, justifications in it. Like when he started with his legs and he couldn't walk, and I thought, that's okay. Like, we can do this. Like, we'll get a wheelchair, which we did. We'll get the equipment. We'll do the thing. I'll take care of him. It's going to be okay. But then when he started losing his arms and his hands and not being able to use his upper body as much, you feel like, I can't do this. But if you would have asked me before it happened, if he got in a car accident and was paralyzed from the waist down, do you think you can do this? I'd be like, no way. Yeah. But then you start getting thankful and just being like, I hope he could just stay paralyzed from the waist down. That would be so good. It's like a weird justification of pain.
Right. Yeah. And progressively on that, like what was happening for you? So part of it, you went into almost a little bit of denial, would you say?
I wouldn't say I went through denial. I'm kind of like a pre-griever, I guess, in some ways. Not that you can pre-grieve death. Like you can try, but you can't pre-grieve it. But in the sense of, this is really hard. This is happening. We're going to go through this. Even if we believe that something could change, this is what we're going through. This is what today is.
What did it look like for you to stay present and connected to your pain in that process?
I just cried a lot. Like I would just like go through like caregiving in like just tears going down my face. Like you got to a place where you don't like even stop it. It just comes, it goes, and it comes, and it goes. And same thing for him too. He was pretty tenacious and strong of like, I'm going to be healed. So he didn't grieve a lot and he didn't process a lot, which was hard in its own way because I did a lot more internal grieving because I didn't want to discourage his morale.
So you couldn't grieve together.
We would have like these moments where we'd like look at each other and be like, oh my goodness. And we would like feel it. But then it was like, you got to keep going. He has to keep surviving. I have to keep helping him survive. And so it definitely was challenging to try to grieve and caregive. You go into, I wouldn't say denial as much as survival.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. Were there, because I have two things on my mind. One is about the kids.
Yeah.
And one is about, like, are there points where you guys got flushed with anger and anger towards each other, where intensity starts coming up, just misplaced anger and intensity? Because I'd feel like, I would be, if I'm in your shoes, I'd be feeling so powerless and out of control with Abby. And then all of a sudden, for me, a default would be anger. I'd be like, fight it, and just get frustrated and be like, oh, that's not at you, but I'm feeling that. I don't know. What would you guys do?
So definitely, I'd get angry at him about really small things because you're exhausted, because at certain points you're up during the night as well, and you're taking care of 4 small children.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other part.
Did you actually do all of that?
All of it, up until the very end. The last 3 months, I got some help, which is I was so thankful for. Maybe 4 months, but for the majority of it,
do you regret that? Like, could you have gotten more help?
Yeah, if now when people go through it, I'm like, you need help, and there's ways to get help. But I kind of had that thing of like, nobody else can help but me because I know him so well. Totally. And he had particulars of how he wanted, things to be, and I knew, and I could read him. And especially as the disease progressed, he couldn't verbalize very well. He had to wear a mask to breathe. Right. And so no one could understand him. So it was so painful to watch someone try to help him, and they can't understand him, and he can't communicate, and he can't breathe. And so it would be like, I have to do it. So I would definitely tell people in the grieving process, if you're a caregiver, definitely find help. And there's always help. Mm-hmm. My brain said there's no help because I was in fight or flight. I was in survival, but there's always help.
So, which is so true. Fight or flight changes how we think. And so you don't think straight. You actually need people to come help think
exactly
with you.
You need people not to trust you. in the fight or flight, because you're not, it's like being like drunk and you're like, I don't need help, but you're like drunk. So you haven't actually like processed it through. That's kind of how it is when you're in fight or flight and something as severe as trying to be a 24/7 caregiver.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
What did you do right in the grief process, and what did you do wrong?
So like in the before he died. Yeah. So what I did wrong is kind of what we just said is I did process with people, but it was kind of like I'm on my own in this. And you get that feeling during any grief process where you're the only one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nobody else understands. And then just like the grief process, when you've lost someone, it feels like nobody can be there for you the way you need them to be there for you.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's a certain flavor that you need, and everyone's giving you 30 flavors, but you need the 31st flavor. You need that flavor, and no one can give it. So it feels very all or nothing again, that fight or flight. What I did good was letting myself cry, letting myself, also you mentioned the kids, being verbal with them. Of like, I'm really sad. It's okay to be sad, and being able to let them grieve. And as I grieved, the other thing that I thought we did really good is we still had joy in our home.
Wow.
And we made space to like play games. When Jeff was in a wheelchair, every day he'd take the kids for a walk around the cul-de-sac. So they would follow him. They're just like really cool pictures of that time, even though they're sad, but they're also really cool because he would take them for a walk around the cul-de-sac every day, because that was something he could do. We never had TV or cable before. He purposely got cable to watch like sports and different things with my son, so that they could have like this bonding. And then like we had never had video games, and he got video games so that they could do that together. So it was like making some compromises for what we probably wouldn't have done just because we didn't really feel like younger kids needed video games, but we probably got them earlier than we would have because he wanted to have that experience with them.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And he got out of bed every single day, because he said, I want them to see that I'm still alive, even if I'm sick. And so they saw him up, having dinner with us, having, meals with us, him being like, it's going to be okay. So as much as you still need to grieve, you also don't want it to be you're already gone.
Right.
And so we tried to make it like we're still having life together. And he would like, when they got home from school, he'd like always make them come over to where he's at, even if he, couldn't move, and sit and have them tell him about his day. Even when he had the mask on and he couldn't talk very well, he'd be like, come really close. And then he would like talk to them about their day and like what happened. So anything he could do, he did. And I felt like that was a really good process of still keeping life going, even though part of you wants to just
curl up.
Yeah.
How did your kids handle that? And
it was a little tricky, like in hindsight, obviously. It was a little tricky.
I can't imagine this scenario being tricky, watching your dad deteriorate.
Exactly. So open dialogue, letting them ask questions, communicating my questions to them, like, this is hard for me, I don't understand this, so that they can know it was okay to have questions and not understand. Because we were a faith-based home, part of me feels like we didn't give the kids as much time to process, or not time, but like space to process that he could die, because we were believing so much about faith, which is a beautiful gift in itself, but then also you don't end up processing as much grief because you're like, he's going to be healed.
Right.
And it also kind of set them up for some pain after, because
disappointment.
They were sincerely like believing, and that is something we've had to walk through. But Jeff actually wrote a book when 2 months before he started before he was diagnosed, he started the process. He wrote a book that whole entire time.
Wow.
He finished the book 10 days before he died.
Wow.
Yeah. Impressive. The whole entire thing, which I actually didn't know he finished it. I found it after he had passed away. And so in the book, I read it to the kids. And so he actually helped them with their process because he said, like part of his book says, I'd rather, go through this process believing than to give up belief, because even though that's going to be severely disappointing, it's still going to bring more life than not believing. Mm-hmm. So like, that's what I was reading to the kids. Like, even though we are so disappointed, we actually have more life because we believed than that we gave up hope and belief.
Wow.
That's powerful.
Wow. So then he dies. That sounds so
I
sounds so
know.
casual when I said this.
No,
And then he dies.
we were joking around a little bit before we started this because we were just kind of talking about what it was going to look like, and I was like, and then he dies, you know, like yeah, dun, dun, dun. Yeah. And like as much as that can kind of sound like after I just shared all that sadness, and it's really sad, it is kind of part of the process of being able to laugh about things too, and take some of the edge off of the seriousness, even though both can coincide together.
And how long ago did he die?
He died in 2009, August of 2009.
So 10 years.
We're about to hit 10 years.
Wow.
About 10 years.
Yeah.
So did you simultaneously, and I think this is a thing that is common for people, but in certain circumstances, did you feel relief and sadness at the same time?
Yes, definitely. I was very relieved because when you watch someone suffer for so long, you are so relieved that they're not suffering anymore.
Yes.
And but then you're sad because even though there's no hope, in the medical world for it to happen, and even being faith-based, you kind of think like maybe something's going to happen.
A miracle could happen.
Anything could happen.
Yes.
You just feel like maybe we'll get more time.
And I think that people may disagree with what I'm about to say that don't know it, but in our culture, we've observed miracles.
Yeah.
We've actually seen tangible miracles in people's bodies and stuff. And to be in a culture where you've seen personal accounts, stories of those that you love who have experienced miracles, all of a sudden, I mean, the weight of that at the same time is crazy because you're like, what do I do with this? Like, how do I move forward from that? How do I process that I didn't get that?
Yeah, and that's a grief in itself because you have a relationship with God that you see a certain way, and then when he doesn't, quote unquote, come through for you,
right?
It feels like he's left you. It feels like he chose someone else that gets the miracle, but Jeff doesn't get the miracle. And ironically enough, Jeff saw probably over 100, I don't know the number, people healed. Wow. He would go to the hospital and pray for people and clear out hospital floors. We lived in Mexico for a year, and he would go through and see like people that were blind, deaf, people that had terminal cancer. He would literally see like a tumor that you could physically see just dissolve. So he had this gift of healing. Yeah. But then he's not healed.
Yep.
So how did you process with God? Like, because I mean, I think it's really hard. This is probably one of the things I think people struggle with the most is when horrible things happen. Yeah. What do we do with what we believe about there being something bigger than us?
Yeah, it's a good question, whether you're a Christian or any type of belief system.
Totally.
Why do bad things happen to good people is probably one of the number one questions. Yeah. I don't actually know that answer.
What?
Yep, I do not know that answer. But it's kind of similar to the healing process emotionally, where your external world feels like it determines everything. But when your internal world's okay, you're okay. Even if your external world is not okay. Yeah. And so that's how I process that with God. Because my relationship with him isn't about what he does. It's about who he is. We never disconnected. Because that wasn't the core of our relationship. What he did for me is secondary to who he is to me. And who he is to me never changed, even though he didn't do healing for Jeff.
Wow. Who was and is God to you, just so that I could understand that?
Yeah. So who God is to me is love, is peace, is joy, is healing, is life. And so he's those characteristics, and his alibi when people blame God for people dying is that he was with me. So during that process, he was love to me. He was with me when no one else could be there for me. I felt his presence. I felt him being with me in small things and big things. He was everywhere. He was surrounding me.
What are a few of the moments that were like sweet to you where you felt him with you?
I'd probably say the best ones because my load was so heavy with raising kids in 24 hours.
I can't even imagine. Like when I hear your story, I'm like, I would totally melt down.
10 years
later, set fire to the house.
I mean, even a year later, days later, I was like, how did I do that? If you picked me up right now and you plop me back there,
Couldn't do
I
it.
could not do it. There's no way. I somehow had superpowers or I adapt or something. I'm not sure.
Humans are capable of far more than we
So
think.
wild.
So
Yeah.
much more. But it's progressive too. So
Yep.
you kind of adapt as you go and you do more than you think you could ever possibly do.
Yep.
But because it was such a heavy load, whenever God would tell me or show me through himself, through people, through just kind of a knowing that it wasn't my responsibility, that I didn't have to do anything. Because sometimes when people want you to believe a certain way or think a certain way, they're like, you got to do this. And I want you to do this. And I want you to do this.
There's a lot of opinions through grief.
There's a lot of opinions.
There's
and
a lot of people's
Yes.
ideas of what you need and what it should look like and what is right and what is
very-
wrong.
Yeah.
And that can be as traumatizing as the grief, because now you're
Exactly.
having to like choose not to let other people down, or choose to let other people down
Yep.
to stay true to yourself.
Exactly.
Or choose to abandon yourself to take care of other people. But both of those are painful.
Yeah, it's really true. And usually people who have the strongest opinion about grief have never, I mean, we've all had loss, but never
Sure.
had a severe loss.
A severe loss where it's like, oh, someone that was the closest to me
Yeah.
was gone.
But they know, and they know what you should do.
Totally.
I think, and I think that that's similar to even body stuff. You know, Abby's
Yeah.
sickness. That she's always had different sicknesses throughout her journey, and so many people lovingly have had some strong opinions. It's like you've never had
Exactly.
long-term chronic sickness, so I like that you have a strong opinion, but you've never been in those shoes.
And I would say with dealing with that, because it is a major thing, you know, it's like you're traumatized by the death, and then you're re-traumatized by people processing the death with you and around you.
Absolutely.
So, but I also approach that the same way I did God. I'm okay if they say stupid things.
Yeah.
My internal world is okay, even if they say what they shouldn't say. And from that place of peace, I actually would laugh a lot. Like, I try not to laugh at people's faces, but like,
It's so ridiculous.
Like after I wanted to do kind of like less from like a triggered place, but more from like a bloopers type place.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like the things people said, because like I would walk away and I would like be like doubling over laughing. And I would just be like, they have to not know what they just said. Like they have to, like they have to have just said whatever came to their mind. And they did not think that through.
Is there anything absurd that stands out in your mind that in the wake of all that, you're like, oh my God?
Mostly like the remarriage thing. Like it was like at the funeral and someone's like, don't worry, honey, you're young, you're pretty, you'll get married. And I was like, I'm like, what? And the other thing that was
He hasn't even been dead
Totally.
for
I
a
was
week.
like, I don't want to get married, you know, like it's just, yeah.
Right.
And like at the funeral. And then the other thing someone said at the funeral, they're like, don't worry, being a single mom's really hard, but you're going to be okay. And I'm like, I'm a single mom? I like didn't even know I was a single mom because it just like happened. I hadn't like processed the ramifications of it yet. And so it was like this like heartbreaking news of like, I'm a single mom.
Oh my gosh.
That is...
When severe loss happens, especially when people interact with me, my number one for me is I don't have to say anything. And they're probably better off if I don't say anything. So my anything that I usually do say is like, hey, you're probably going through something really crazy that probably a lot of people can't relate to. And I'm just available to love you as best as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so whatever that looks like, I'm here. Let me
Yeah.
know your need. And it's just
Yeah, because I actually
simple.
think people say stupider things than they actually believe, because
I do
they're in
too.
fight or flight. They're like, I don't know how to survive this. I don't know how they just and then it's just like they like word vomit things that are like, because there's been times in the past where people have been in a hard situation and I walk away being like, what did I just say?
Totally.
I don't even believe
It's like you
that.
come to and you're like, oh my goodness.
Ah, but it's like so scary to know, like there's no way to know what to say.
Exactly. And so you're not going to be able to fix what people are going to say. I love what you just said, because that is the biggest thing you can do when someone goes through extreme grief is to be with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so all your verbal, all your words, your body language should say, I'm being with you.
Yeah.
And that is actually what people need the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. Contrary to common man beliefs, we don't need to be fixed.
I know.
I take it. Women are the same. Women are the exact same.
Yeah, they are.
People in pain need love, not a fix.
Exactly.
I actually was thinking about this the other day. I was crying with somebody about my body, And I feel relieved when people don't try to fix me, because when people try to fix me, then I also feel like I'm disappointing them as it goes on.
Exactly. It's so true.
People who can hold, I can just be with you in your pain, but most people can't hold that, because the idea is if I'm with you in your pain, I have to feel pain, and I don't have coping skills for feeling pain.
Yeah.
It will trigger all of my pain. Then we'll have too much pain. Then we'll drown.
Yep, exactly. We'll be like the two kids that are trying to like crawl up each other's bodies trying to get to the top. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about the grief process after he died.
So after he died, like you said, there was relief. So soon after, it was more like, what can we go? And I also felt for my kids that I wanted them to have fun, and we've been kind of trapped for a while because of what we were going through. So we did a lot of adventures. One of the coolest things that we did that a lot of how we went through the grief process that was successful, I didn't know at the time what I was doing.
It was by accident.
Yeah, I totally was. I was like, it was kind of like my instincts told me, okay, this is what we should do, you know, and I would do it, and then I'd be like, oh, wow. That was really good.
That worked.
So it wasn't like I had this like pre-knowledge. It would just be more, okay, I know this child. I didn't think this would work. And then I did it. And then I was like, oh, this worked. But one of the things that I recommend for people is you experience going through the caregiving process as well as the death. We experienced trauma together. So we had trauma bonding.
Yeah.
The kids and I did. So what we did after, unknowingly, is we have some really close family friends. And they kind of were just like, come close, like come to our house, come be with us. They have quads, they have zip lines, they have ATV vehicles, they have hiking, they have ponds that you jump into. They just have all the things. And so we would go do that often. Like, and then of course the first 2 years after he had died, we were there probably 4 or 5 times a year doing things like that. Even in the winter, we'd be like polar plunge.
So smart.
So we did all these traumatic, fun things. So they would have to face their fears, which is being traumatized, even if it's on a zip line.
Right.
And then I would be there with them being like, you can do this. Like, I'm with you. And they'd be, you know, like wanting to do it, but like scared. And we'd go through the process and then we'd do it. And at the end, they'd be like, oh my goodness, that was amazing. So we had the experience of re-traumatizing to a certain degree through fun, and then rebuilding a bond with overcoming, victory, being able to do things we didn't think we could do. And that, I feel like, was one of the biggest like practical things that we did, not knowing.
Instead of just shutting down and being like, oh, we're dead now that dad's dead.
Yep.
It's no, we're going to go face fears and obstacles and have fun in the process and overcome something together and see that we're capable and we're not fragile and we're not just permanently broken from this thing.
Yeah.
Something like that. Was that?
Yep. 100%. And that was huge. Like, we were still at home. We would go there. They live about a couple hours from here. So we go there 4 or 5 times a year and have those experiences. Then we'd come back and we would be sad. And we'd be grieving and going through the process. But paired with it, we had these extraordinary adventures together that re-traumatized to create a healthier bond.
Right.
So brain-wise, like you were saying, that was a huge thing for our brains to rewire differently. Because once you experience extreme loss, especially as a child, it becomes your coding for the rest of your life. It becomes the story that you're going to tell the rest of your life. But when you pair it with life and overcoming and joy, that's part of your story too.
Wow.
And then another thing that we did when we were more home on a day-to-day basis is, and this is just an idea I had that I didn't realize was going to be so beneficial, is I told the kids, your dad died. This is so sad. And you're going to be sad probably for a while. And that's okay. But I also want you to know you're going to be really happy sometimes. And you're going to be excited about things. And you're going to dream about things. And then you're going to be sad again. And then you're going to be happy. And so we'd play this game in the car like almost daily. Let's play the game. And I'd say, just yell out whatever you're feeling. I'm mad. I'm happy. I'm excited. So I just gave permission for them to be able to be as happy as they're going to be during this time and be as sad as they're going to be during this time, and that they can live together.
Yeah. Which is so true, because people often don't feel permission on either side.
Yep.
Either I need to be over my grief, I need to be happy and fine so that people can be okay, or I can't be happy because that's not honoring
exactly
this
saying
person.
You didn't love your dad because now you're having fun and you're laughing, and I'm like, you'll love your dad so much by being happy.
Yes.
He will be so happy.
By allowing yourself to be alive, to come alive in this process.
Yeah, because, I mean, if it was me that had died and somehow I could see Jeff and the kids living their life and I saw them give up hope and I saw them defeated and I saw that carry through their lives, I'd be so grieved. And it would not actually honor my life to see that. But Jeff can see. I don't know how it all works, but I know he can see. And I know that we're honoring him both in the joy and in the grief.
Absolutely.
I'm just giving you a moment.
Feeling moment. Not a quiet moment. It's not quiet here.
Do you ever feel things like, I could feel Jeff proud today, or I could feel him here, or what has that been like?
So right after he died, I had this gift given to me where I could it felt like he was living on the East Coast and we were living on the West Coast and planes hadn't been invented yet. And that we probably weren't going to see each other again, but he was alive. I could just feel it. I just know that I know. I might be crazy. Right. Maybe it was a coping mechanism, but I know that he's alive. So I definitely feel that. I don't know where heaven ends and earth begins. I don't know those answers. I just know it instinctively. When you've been married to someone, you guys probably know this, you know things. Mm-hmm. You can't explain them, but you read each other's minds. You know something's not right. Well, I still feel like I have that to a certain degree of knowing that he's alive, that he would be proud, that he, what he would think in that moment, whether it's technically him thinking it or not, or just me knowing him so well, what he would think.
Right.
It feels real. It feels alive.
That's amazing. Do you have your kids, how do they have that intuition?
Not as much. They were younger.
Oh, yeah.
My oldest kind of does, because her memory is amazing. So she still remembers very detailed things about him to this day. She's 17 and she was only 7 at the time.
Wow.
So she still remembers. But, we have home videos, we have pictures, we talked about him. We talked about him a lot those first 5 years, probably the strongest.
Yeah.
But over time, we don't talk about him as much.
Absolutely.
We talk about him more. But some people might argue that you need to make sure your kids are remembering their father. But it's part of their story. But he's not here to be to the capacity part of their story that he would be if he was alive.
Yeah.
So to make so much space for him now when he's not here isn't the healthiest for the kids.
It can be really painful.
Right. Exactly.
And I would think, I'm not in that type of situation, but if I create that much space for somebody that's not actually here, it doesn't allow a lot of space for someone to actually healthfully come into that space.
Exactly, in a tangible way.
In a tangible way, like other fathering figures to come through our life, because we go, no, that space is reserved for my dad. And then we have a hard time absorbing the love that God wants to provide to us for this place that feels like there's a lack.
Yeah, that's exactly. And that's what we did too. My kids have so many father figures in their lives between, we have big families, so they have a lot of uncles.
13.
Yeah, exactly. They've got 6 uncles.
6,
yeah.
Yep.
They have, Jeff's family, of course, they've been amazing through this whole process. But then even my brother's friends, just all different people, they have so many male figures in their life that my married friends with kids get jealous and ask if their kids could be on the basketball team that my brother's best friend is coaching.
Right.
They're like, I feel so sad that your kids have so many people in their life and my husband has to work all the time and he doesn't get it.
Totally.
And I'm laughing because normally when a spouse dies and kids don't have a father, it's just let's not go too close because we might catch it.
Right.
But because my kids, we made so much space by Jeff always being their dad, of course.
Totally.
But he can't be here.
Right.
So people are going to come stand in the gap for what he wanted to give you, but couldn't give you.
It's beautiful.
And you're going to have so many people come and be with you. You'll never be alone. And so their story has so many father figures in it. Do they still deal with grief because they lost their dad?
Yeah.
Yes. And they always will.
And it kind of hits, this is something to, I think, tell people, grief hits at different moments. So I think people think I'm over grief. And then it comes up for a wave and then they're like, oh no, but this is just the nature of grief.
Yeah.
Especially when it affects things. I know my mom is still alive, but she is not a mom and not capable of that and hasn't been for years. And so there's like, I feel pretty good about it. Like I don't feel in pain about it, but there'll be moments.
Yeah.
Like when I'm like, oh, this would be a time I'd really want to be able to call a mom.
Yeah.
Oh, this would be a time. So like, there's just waves where it's going to hit and then waves where you feel like you're completely fine.
So true.
What do you,
Another question I wanted to interject, like in your guys' process, even 10 years later, do you have times where you talk about like, oh, this is what I miss most about Dad, about Jeff, whatever? Is that part of a long-term grieving process that happens for people? Is that okay for them to verbalize that? Or is there a time when that?
I think they should verbalize it the rest of their lives. I want them to tell their kids about him. I want, I want him to be part of their story to the proportion that their heart is longing for him to be part of their story. So we do, but if we had a measuring stick between how much percentage-wise, how much we did before and how much we do now, it's definitely minimal now.
Yeah.
And what I do is I just try to make room for natural ways that he gets brought up. So they meet a friend for the first time and the friend's like, where's your dad? This just happened to my son. And he gets in the car and just says, hey, I haven't even told anyone that my dad's died in a long time because everyone I know knows.
right.
But this guy was like, your dad died. And then it looked like he was going to cry. And then it kind of made me want to cry. And my son's 16 now.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, that's sad. And he's like, he just made me want to tell him it's okay. It's okay. And I was like, it's okay if it's not okay. And so we're still having those conversations now, but I don't do like, hey, you missing your dad? Hey, let's talk about him. We haven't talked about him in a while. I feel like we should bring him back up so you don't forget him. So it's just a lot more just
very
natural.
organic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that feels more authentic anyways.
Well, more about you going back to your process, because we heard a little bit with the kids and how you did. Were there other further ways that you personally grieved that were?
So I didn't know what you mentioned that I help other people go through shame, which is connected to loss as well. Part of why I'm successful in what I do is because of this grief process. You connect to pain to this degree, you're able to help people go through their pain as well.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know. I've only been doing what I'm doing now, I think, for about 7 years. So this happened 10 years ago. The first, 2, 3, 4 years, I didn't have the same knowledge I have now. I didn't know what was going on in my brain. I didn't know what was going on in my emotions. Ironically, even though I help people with emotions, I was a lot more shut down then. I was a lot more logical.
Yeah.
And so in that, I've had to actually go back to those times and give myself compassion. I've had to go back to those times to see the areas that I blame myself, or I blamed him, or I felt shame, or something really did hurt, but I was in such survival, I didn't give myself the luxury of grieving it.
So you've actually had to grieve things you couldn't grieve in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And even if I would have known what I know now,
It's still what
you can only grieve so much. Your capacity to grieve, you can't grieve everything at once. It would kill us.
And
that's why people
survival is shutting down things because you need resource. So survival is like, my brain is shutting off the things that don't need the most attention. It's like, if you're losing blood, you're going to keep it in the organs that need it the most. And so it's good for our ability to be able to shut things down to survive. But there's not ever a time when you can't grieve well enough that you don't have to go clean up a mess later.
Exactly. And if you look at it as a problem, then you're going to be bummed the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You're
Because
going to be
there's
like,
this thing I have to do.
there it is again. Exactly. And this, is horrible. And when is this going to end? And why did this happen to me? But if you look at it as a love relationship, that I actually get to go back and give myself what I didn't have before, it's not a bad thing.
No.
It's actually,
It's not an annoyance.
No, it's a privilege. It's a privilege for myself to be able to go back and look at I was 29 when he passed away, my 29-year-old self, even when I was caregiving, and be like, you're so brave. And I'm so proud of you. And just to be able to be there with myself in that time. So it doesn't look like oh no, I have to go back there again because it wasn't taken care of properly.
And that's,
I think,
there you go.
yeah. Well, I think like that's kind of been my mindset, is whenever things come up where there wasn't love, I never feel shame or blame. I actually just feel like, oh, this is how you get love to a deeper spot.
Yeah.
is by it coming up and you getting to go back and loving that part.
I don't remember what I was going to say, but I've done a lot of that with my life, and it's been beautiful. It's so freeing, and what it heals is loneliness.
Yeah.
Because like one of the staple things that you talked about that a lot of people feel is they feel lonely in their experience of grief and their pain, whatever. Yeah. And a lot of times the reason that people don't visit their grief or their historic pain is because they didn't feel like anyone was there for them then. They don't feel like there's really anyone that's going to be there for them now as they do it. But what we realize is that lie, that no one's there for me, really is rooted in a lot of places where we disconnect from ourselves. We abandon ourselves in the moment. And I'm not saying that you abandoned yourself or disconnected from yourself back then.
In survival, I did.
In some ways,
yeah,
right?
I didn't intentionally.
And not intentionally.
I think most of us don't intentionally abandon ourselves.
Right. But what happens is that loneliness I've perceived is magnified because of that, because we're in, like you said, survival mode. And once we realize like, oh no, I can go back now with love and like you said, compassion, and I can be present with myself. That doesn't have to feel like a lonely experience. And it doesn't have to feel overwhelming any longer. Yeah. And I think that one of the other things that was I'm kind of verbally processing that was running through my mind is people believe that if I process my grief, I'm going to get swallowed alive and I'll get stuck in it. And a big part of what you're saying, and one thing that I tell people is that it's not like something that you have to take off in one bite. You just have to chew this whole thing up in one sitting. Yeah. It's this progressive thing where some days we cried, some days we laughed. It was like piece by piece, and it was a slowly bleeding out the pain. It was like release moments over and over again. And if we don't feel the pressure of having to just get over something, that can be done really well. Like if there's grace and there's patience with ourselves, then we're just like, okay, not a big deal. Yeah. We can totally do this, and we can do a little spurt here and a little spurt there, and it's not a burden to me that I may do that for the next 10 years on and off.
Yep. And that really makes it less of a hopeless process, because if you feel like you have to do all at once, it feels like it will destroy you.
Absolutely.
And one of the 5 stages of grief is denial. And a lot of people get really worried about denial in the grieving process. But there's a reason why it's there, and it's actually meant to protect us. But because we can't do all of it at once.
Right.
And so when you're in denial, enjoy it.
Don't park there the rest of your life, but enjoy it for moments.
Really, though, it's relief. It would be like if you were running a race and you got to stop and take a breath and get a drink of water. You wouldn't be like, "Oh no, I'm not running right now. I'm screwing this race up. I'm not going to win. I'm not going to be okay." You would know that you need to take that time because that time is going to strengthen you and fortify you
so that you can
to be able to continue the process. Yeah. And the other thing too about denial is people get scared, like, am I grieving enough? Am I not grieving enough? Because there's a lot of
rules that people have about grief.
So
there's
many
one
rules.
right way to do it. Am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? And there's this picture of this straight line that of yarn, and then a picture of it like all over and in a mess. And they're like, this is what people want grief to look like, and this is what grief actually looks like. It's like all over the place. It's up and down. It's all around. It's twisted in knots and turned. It's like it just is a mess.
Yeah. Or an adventure.
Yes.
I feel like one of the key ingredients with grief is the word patience. What would you say about that?
So definitely patience with yourself, patience with how your life develops and changes and you adapt, because you're never going to go back.
Yep.
Everyone always wants to know, when is this going to be over? Because it hurts so bad. And I don't say it the first day by any means. I'm just like, it's okay. You're okay right now. But it's never going to go away. And it's not meant to go away. We are so adverse to pain that we think pain is bad. But pain actually has beauty in it. Pain actually can bring life to us. And so it's never going to go away. You are going to have a new normal. But that new normal has the opportunity for it to be even better than it was before. And so in my life, when I look back on it, if I could have changed it, of course I would.
Right.
But with Jeff gone, my life actually has more beauty to it than it even did then. Because what dies, what the loss you go through, the grief you go through produces something inside of you, if you'll let it, that you can't get, I believe, any other way than processing through your grief and pain.
Yes.
So instead of it being this thing of like, when is it going to be over? It's okay. Take as long as you need. When will I get back to normal? You're not going to. Your new normal will be better than your old normal. Patience is so key to it, and patience with yourself in it.
Tell us, what do you know about, I just have 2 more questions that I want to do, but tell us about your brain and what's happening in it during grief.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'll keep it real concise just because of time.
You can take a little bit if you need it.
Yeah. Take your time.
So I'm recently walking a family through grief, and I can't bring their husband, their father back. I can't. So when they come there, that's not our purpose.
Right.
I can't fix them. I can't make it better. But what I can do is help them relieve the other brain triggers that are happening in their lives and help bring strength to those. Because when you go through grief, you're not just grieving the immediate situation. You're grieving all the grief that you've experienced in your life.
Absolutely.
Piggybacks.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, it's not just that loss. It's in my
loss.
In my personal life, my dad left. And so when Jeff left, even though he died, I'm grieving both. I'm grieving those things simultaneously without being conscious of both of those things happening internally.
Absolutely.
And so what's happening in your brain is you're having past triggers, but you don't know what's happening because your brain's saying, danger, danger, we felt this before.
Right.
So I can't relieve the immediate situation, but what I can do is teach people how to get comfort in their past pain, get comfort in the things that are causing them to go to fight, flight, or freeze that actually don't have anything to do with the death. But they feel like they do.
Right.
Yep.
And if you see kind of like grief being like in the center, and then around it are all of our everyday triggers that we were experiencing before this person ever died. If we can take care of those, we actually create a safe place to grieve, that we're not having to grieve not just the immediate, but we're having to grieve so much more.
Right.
So if we know how our brain works and how multiple areas of grief are being triggered at the same time, we can take care of what was in the past so we can grieve the present.
I call it clean pain versus dirty pain. Like the clean pain is the actual event that is happening right now. And the dirty pain is all the stuff that brings up. The shame, the hopelessness, the fear, the 25 other friends that you've transitioned with, like all of the stuff around it where you actually have power over those things.
Yeah.
So you don't have power over Jeff dying, but you do have power over, I can go have compassion on the girl whose dad left her.
Exactly. And in doing that, it relieves some of the intensity, and it's still the hardest thing you'll ever go through.
Right.
But it doesn't have the same magnitude of hopelessness, the same magnitude of feeling helpless in that situation.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say one more thing about loneliness, just because I feel like this isn't even just for grief, but it's also loneliness in general. Most widows, even though I don't even think of myself as a widow,
Totally.
but technically I am. Most widows, most people that have lost a spouse, one of the main things they'll say is, I feel so lonely. And I would use the same process we were just talking about with loneliness, with losing your spouse, because we think all of our loneliness is because he's gone.
Right.
But what I found is that I'm not lonely anymore.
Yeah, I have never seen you.
Yeah,
No.
lonely.
I'm not lonely.
I don't ever get
You
that
also
from
don't
you.
feel like a widow.
No, not at all.
No,
I'm
you
always
wouldn't even
like,
know.
wait, me? I look behind me. I'm like, oh yeah, yep. And a
Totally.
single mom too. I'm like,
Right.
oh yeah, technically I am.
Yes.
I don't identify it. It's
No.
not my identity. I don't feel, do I get lonely at times? Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm not capital L lonely.
Yeah.
Because I've actually taken care of that. And I feel like people blame their loss
Yep.
for feeling lonely
So true.
when you could actually take care of the loneliness and you could miss the person
Yes.
versus just being stuck in the loneliness.
That's so great.
And if we take care of our loneliness, now I can miss who Jeff was, not miss what he gave to me to medicate and relieve my loneliness.
Right.
And so now I'm not lonely, and I actually get to enjoy who Jeff was in my life versus feeling this pain from the loneliness that I'm not actually able to be at peace within myself.
Right. What, again, going back to the idea that part of the cure for the loneliness is to not abandon ourselves. And that self-abandonment, when we resolve that self-abandonment, Abby could leave my life tomorrow. And if I haven't abandoned myself in my journey and I actually have a healthy relationship with my own heart, I will miss her. I'll be sad and definitely grieve her leaving.
Yep.
But I can actually sit here and go, yeah, but I'm not living in loneliness.
Exactly. And
because I had life. Yeah. She wasn't my life source in the first place.
It's completely key. And if we can differentiate that through the grieving process, it's horrible, but it's not as bad.
Well, and I'll say that having worked with some people, grief is such a sticky subject, but there's people who will blame their life problems on the loss. And like I'm thinking about a client that I have, and their story they've written is all of this is wrong because of the death of this person. And recognizing I'm like, well, there's a lot of these things that could have happened regardless of if he died or not. And so it's both. It's holding it where I give myself permission to be sad and I give myself permission to be angry and I give myself all this room, but I also then am healing the things, because you don't feel like it's a raw wound that is wrecking you or holding you captive or handicap.
No, if I was to describe my grief now, 10 years later, after taking care of my pain, not leaving myself in my grieving process, I would say it's sentimental.
Yeah.
Right.
I sentimentally miss him. I miss that his unique presence isn't here, but I'm okay. And I know that he's okay. I know he's not here right now, but I know he's okay. I know I'm okay. I know the kids are okay. And so it just creates so much space to be able to say that I don't have to blame what happened, because I no longer think that was my source, like you said. And I don't have to. So it's more of this sweet grieving. And it's more honoring to who the person is, to grieve them versus just grieve the loss of them.
Yeah. One person asked me recently, what's the difference between validating pain and being a victim? Where does it cross the line? And for me, one of the definitions I said is being a victim is acknowledging pain, but believing we're powerless to it. And believing that it's done something permanent to us, leaving us hopeless. So it's victimization is almost I feel hopeless now. Nothing's going to be better ever again. I can't do anything about it. I'm just screwed. Whereas the validating our pain, like what we're talking about in the grieving process, is I'm being able to acknowledge this was a loss that truly happened to me. And there's hope for a tomorrow where I actually can find beauty. I can fully come alive on the other side of this. And being able to hold those two things in tension is a beautiful balance. I can acknowledge my pain and have hope all at the same time. Yeah. I don't have to get lost in a denial, a big smiley denial that just says, oh, hope's around the corner tomorrow. Oh, everything will work out. But it's I can hold those two in tension, and that can be a beautiful healing process.
Yeah, I agree. And similar to that, self-pity versus self-compassion.
Yep.
So self-pity
Very
says,
similar, yeah.
Poor you, hopeless. Self-compassion says, I'm so sorry I'm with you.
Yep.
I love that.
It's great.
Okay, my last question for you is, what are some of the keys from the grief process? Because not everybody loses their husband.
Yeah.
Right now,
There's
anyway.
all
Maybe
different
when
types
we're
of grief.
in 90s. Yeah. But so what are similar things? Because people who are listening here, if they haven't had a major loss, are going to be like, well, I think it's the same process, just on different levels. So what would you say to people who have less grief about the grief process? I mean, maybe it's not
less severe. You're saying something
severe,
that's not
exactly. We all have loss. Some loss is more severe than other loss.
Yeah.
So, like you said, loss is loss. So we're grieving. We've been grieving our whole lives.
Yes.
And we grieved a lot when we were little and we didn't even realize it.
We were so good at grieving when we were little.
We
would just cry. We would feel dramatic
He
about
threw a ball at my head.
It's the end of the world.
I ate the whole Snickers and now it's gone.
Exactly. So much grieve about everything. We're just naturally grieving. And become like a little child, being able to say, even if my grief is bigger than your grief or your grief is bigger than my grief, it doesn't matter. I tell people, people all the time because they'll have something bad happen in their life and they'll be like, especially when it first happened, they'd be like, but you lost your husband. So this is like not even a big deal, you know? And I'm like, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Your story is a big deal and your loss is a big deal. And what you went through needs to be grieved, whether our perspective is our reality. So if for some people they've grieved moving across the country more than I grieved losing Jeff because of what it was going on inside of them.
Yep, and what it's attached to.
Exactly. And so honor your loss, no matter how big, no matter how small.
Love that.
Become like a child and grieve it even if it doesn't make sense. Grieve it even if your brain says that's dumb. Your heart says it hurts.
Right.
And so giving yourself permission, no matter what the loss is, it's all the same. And if you see it as all the same, even though there's grief is grief, and then there's severity of how things happen, but it's all the same.
Right.
This is a really key thing to be with somebody in their grief, empathy.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if I'm willing to face my loss, even if it's smaller than somebody else's loss, then I can be with them in their loss, even if our losses are different.
Yeah.
Loss doesn't have to match to have empathy.
So good.
We've all experienced loss, so we can all be with someone in it, even if it's a different type of loss.
So good.
So if you're willing to face your loss, even if it's not big, and grieve and go through that process of accepting your pain and comforting your pain and being able to go play again, then you will actually have as much freedom from a severe grief as you will from a small grief.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's
So good.
really good. I think I said last question last time, but this is really
Go ahead.
the last question.
You go for it.
This is really the last one. What do you are there any things that you tell people to be careful of in grief processes?
Be careful of comparison.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That kills grief.
It kills grief. Just
Because
like
people think my pain only matters if it's worse than yours.
Exactly.
It's a weird
Which is
thing.
the same,
Oh, yeah.
It's like it only counts if I can prove that it's the worst.
Exactly. And like I'll say with like divorce.
Yeah, I was
And-
literally
yeah.
just going to
Yep.
say that. People think, well, everyone's parents get divorced, so I should be fine.
Yep.
But it should be horrible to everyone because it's loss.
It's as severe as a loss of losing someone
Yes.
as physically losing someone.
Yes.
And it's grieved in the same way. We
Yeah.
just say we chose it
right.
instead of it happening to us, or they chose it, versus actually saying this is a loss that I need to grieve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so comparison. Don't compare your story to another person's story.
Mm-hmm.
And also don't shame yourself by telling yourself you should do this better. You should do it quicker. You should do it like that other person did it. You should be over it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we stop saying those shaming words to our grieving process, then we allow ourselves to have whatever flavor of grief we need to have.
Mm-hmm.
Big, small, ugly, pretty, whatever that grieving process is going to be. Now you've just given yourself permission to say you are a unique person that gets to grieve uniquely. And no one in this world is going to grieve just like you.
It's good.
That's so good.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you're listening and you have gotten stuck in grief, because I think that is, sometimes people are scared to feel grief because they've seen people that 20 years later, they're in a deep depression from something that happened a long time ago. And so they're like, I don't want to be stuck. And sometimes I know in my own life, there are things that I got stuck in. And so if you feel like that's you and you're stuck in grief, I'd recommend actually getting some help, because one of the things to get your brain through the grief process, you actually need other people involved. You need to be connecting to other people. You need to have other people involved in loving you and helping you. And like Laura was talking about earlier, other people can help you peel away the things that aren't even about that grief.
Yeah.
Other people can help you be like, oh, hey, I know you feel abandoned, but let's peel away the other abandonment that was there besides this moment. Let's peel away the other things, because if you're stuck in grief, it probably means that they're all clumped still together, and you can dissect it and begin to take them apart.
That's good. So how can people reach you if they want to know more about you in the future? Like, do you have an email address or some form or some way to just connect to you?
So I have a website, lauraduncanconsulting.com.
Okay.
Or lauraduncanconsulting@gmail if you want to email me. But yeah. those
Because
are
I
the
know
two
that you
primary
do
ones.
you do all kinds
She
of
has group trainings.
and all kinds of stuff like that. So if you guys want to get connected with her, you can even shoot her an email and just say, hey, get me, let me have information whenever you're doing stuff so I can know more about some of the things that you're doing. So
and it's not immediate. It'll still be some time, but I want to do like a blame-free grief. We're helping people to walk through grief without blame. And
love that.
So there will be resources coming. Yeah.
That's so good. I love that.
Wonderful.
And so, if you've gotten anything out of this episode, like, subscribe, share, rate, review.
Rating
on
it
iTunes.
takes like 2 seconds. Tell all of your friends about it. That takes like 10 seconds.
And this week has
only have
just
10 friends.
freshly launched the Father series.
Yes.
It's out there. It's already shipped.
Woo!
People are getting their hands on it. So if you want to check that out, you can go to Justin and Abby. That's abi.com.
If you're stuck
/shop.
in grief about all the ways that your dad screwed you up,
Father
or
series.
if you are grieving something and it's confusing, but it's actually just your grief from your dad, you never felt, we can help
Father
you through
series.
those steps. We can help you get unstuck.
But Laura, thank you so much for allowing us to have that vulnerable space. I call that the holy ground of our heart, when we let these types of things come out and share openly about it. Like, that was really beautiful. I know this is the first time you've talked publicly about this.
Actually, I've shared it bits and pieces, but not exclusively just about Jeff's death and grief.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you
Thank
for giving
you.
us the gift of that, really,
Yes.
so much so. So, all right, everybody, go grieve.
Go team! Go grieve! Go cry about it!